Welcome to today's Explainer. Picture this. It's December 4th, 1971. We're deep in the freezing, vast, and totally unforgiving Rajasthan desert, right near the India-Pakistan border. If you were standing out there, it would feel like a perfectly quiet, empty night. But, as we're about to see, this exact spot is about to become a major flashpoint in military history.
Okay, let's dive into this, because we have a staggering David versus Goliath numerical mismatch here. On one side, you have a defensive force of literally just 120 Indian soldiers. They have very limited ammo and absolutely zero tanks. On the flip side, a massive advancing Pakistani force of 2,000 troops, totally backed up by dozens of heavy armored tanks.
Which brings us to Section 1, the Isolated Desert Outpost. Commanded by Major Kuldip Singh Chandpuri, the men of the 23 Punjab Regiment were stationed at this incredibly remote post. And honestly, their baseline position was incredibly vulnerable. They were totally isolated, had no tanks of their own, and practically no heavy support to fall back on if things went south.
Moving on to Section 2, the approaching armored threat.
Across the border, this advancing Pakistani force had some very clear, highly ambitious strategic objectives. First up, capture Longewala, and do it fast. Second, use that momentum to push deep into Rajasthan toward Jaisalmer. They were advancing with absolute confidence. With that kind of immense numerical superiority and heavy armor, they fully expected to just roll right over any resistance in their path.
But here's the thing about the desert. It really can't keep a massive secret like that hidden forever. Late at night, that deep silence of the remote dunes finally broke. The Indian soldiers started hearing it first. Just this low, distant mechanical rumbling rolling across the sand. And then came the visual confirmation. Headlights started appearing across the pitch-black horizon. Dozens of tanks were approaching. Suddenly, this threat wasn't just theoretical anymore. It was literally right at their doorstep.
Now we hit Section 3, a crucial midnight decision.
So Major Chandpuri is facing a terrible dilemma. Retreat and leave the route completely open into India, or stay and face near certain destruction. He laid it all out for his men with a very stark ultimatum. He said he was going to stay and fight, but he told his unit, anyone who wishes to leave can go.
Not a single soldier left.
So we enter Section 4, the long night battle. And this brilliantly illustrates how the terrain itself completely shifted the tactical balance. As those heavy tanks tried to surround the Indian position, they ran right into a severe environmental hazard. The soft desert sand dunes acted exactly like quicksand, completely halting the heavy armor. And by getting stuck in the sand, these massive, intimidating tanks became stationary, highly vulnerable targets for the defenders' recoilless guns.
What followed was a totally grueling, claustrophobic, hour-after-hour midnight standoff. The defending soldiers were exhausted, running dangerously low on ammo, and completely surrounded in the dark. But on the flip side, the advancing forces were sending wave after wave of attacks, only to have their massive numerical advantage constantly stalled by that treacherous desert terrain.
Which leads us to Section 5. Dawn brings the turning point.
Then came dawn.
Let's move to and see how this builds, because the climax of this battle unfolded incredibly fast. At dawn, the very first rays of sunlight exposed all those trapped tanks from the sky. By early morning, the roar of jet engines started echoing overhead. The Indian Air Force had finally arrived, launching devastating strikes. And by mid-morning, the entire armored advance had completely collapsed.
The aftermath of these airstrikes was absolutely decisive. The arrival of air support completely changed the tactical math. Those stranded tanks were aggressively targeted. That exact same desert sand that had bogged them down during the night had officially turned into a deadly trap by day, totally halting the advancing columns.
And finally, Section 6, Legacy of the Stand. When the dust finally cleared, the physical reality of the battlefield was just striking. Scattered all across the desert were the smoldering remains of destroyed tanks and abandoned vehicles. It was this stark, physical piece of evidence showing exactly how an extreme numerical mismatch was neutralized by a combination of brutal terrain traps and highly tactical air support. So I want to leave you with this final thought. How does a small unit refuse to surrender when historical math fully expects them to fail? It is a brilliant, undeniable collision of tactical terrain, critical timing, and raw human resolve. I hope this explainer gave you a fascinating look into the mechanics of this historic underdog story. Keep questioning the odds, and we'll see you in the next one.